I'm Shirley Smith, presenting Talk About Parenting Classic. I'm bringing back the best of our shows from back in the day. People like to say, oh, but kids are different. Well, no, they're not, but too often their parents are. Will these back in the day shows stand the test of time? Does parenting change? You be the judge. Welcome to Talk About Parenting with Shirley Smith Classic.
You don't have to take a class to be one. There are no final exams. It's a full-time job, and then some. It pays less than minimum wage, and it can provide the greatest rewards in life. So let's talk about parenting with Shirley Smith.
Hi, I'm Shirley Smith, and this is Talk About Parenting. We've got two guests today on the same topic, which is fabulous things their parents have done or did, and they're carrying on. Our first guest on that topic is Roberta Lauderdale, who is absolutely so proud of her father, Bob Lucas, yes. And there is a library named after her dad. Welcome to the show, Roberta.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
What kind of influence was it that your father implanted into you that has allowed you to carry on his dream?
I think the biggest thing, the most important thing I learned from my dad was to not limit myself. I got the impression from my dad that I could do anything that I set my mind to from the time I was a little girl. And I used to follow him around, and I learned how to change batteries in a car and change the oil and do things around the house, a little carpentry, and he built some of our furniture in our home. And I learned a lot of things that I think a lot of little girls don't learn.
I'm kind of glad to hear that, even though that's kind of like not the topic I'm going to explore, but I could use a lot of handywoman service. No. Actually, your father was a writer.
He was a writer and a photographer.
Oh, and a photographer.
Right,
okay, and we have an excellent picture. It's a self-portrait of your father.
Self-portrait that he did in the early 40s. We're actually right after I was born.
She doesn't want to
I don't want
age.
to tell you, but it's early 40s. And
early 40s.
He was very proud of that picture, so it was his favorite picture and kind of my favorite picture also. So.
He was a photographer, he was a writer, and what was his topic and what did he explore, and were you there with him on the explorations?
He would write, my dad could write about just about anything. To support the family, he wrote pulp fiction, and he would put a book out in a couple of nights. He'd sit up all night and smoking his cigarette and had the light over the typewriter, and I used to sit and watch him. And he would just type. He'd be typing, and he'd put out a book in a couple of nights. And he worked as an editor for magazines, including Jet Magazine, the West Coast Jet Magazine. But he did a lot of the stars and
the celeb
entertainment type of magazines. We were living in New York at that time. He also used to write technical manuals and books. My dad, when he started out in college, wanted to be a science teacher and go into medicine. He had to quit school to support the family, but he had that background, and he was a substitute teacher, and so he used to write technical manuals and books and things like that also. So he did quite a bit of a variety of writing. News columns. He worked for the Los Angeles Sentinel. He worked for the Chicago Defender. And he wrote a book, The Black Gladiator, about Jack Johnson, the black boxer, so black champion boxer. So he could write about anything.
And this is a total source of pride, because it's just there. You can see it.
It's there.
You can see it.
Yes, I am so proud. My dad, people who knew him, I have to say, my dad was barely 5 feet tall, and he barely weighed 100 pounds.
Wow.
He was a small man in terms of
stature.
Mm-hmm. But his heart was as big as the world. He had a big heart. He believed in helping people. he believed in supporting people and encouraging people. I remember there was a time when he was working for one of the celebrity magazines, and they wanted some dirt on Elizabeth Taylor. And he actually knew Elizabeth Taylor personally and had some inside information.
He had some dirt.
He had some dirt. And the Inquirer was calling and badgering him and giving him, one of those things, an offer you can't refuse.
But he refused.
But he refused. And he, I watched him, and he talked to me about it. He says, they want to give me a lot of money. And I was a young girl then. They want to give me a lot of money to write this story. He says, but he says, I don't see how I can do that. He says, I just, he said, they trust me. How can I go against these people's trust, And we did not, we weren't rich. We weren't rich financially. And so it tore him, it really did tear at him that he could have gotten this money, and it would have been a lot of money, would have been a big help, and yet he couldn't see himself, going against people who trusted him.
Also, it would have been a lot of money for the time being.
Right, on the short.
But his values and his ethics, those are something that, he has implanted in his family members, and that's a much longer range than whatever you would do with money.
That's important. That's been a big lesson for me also, that money was not the most important thing. What people thought of you, your character, they were worth more than any money someone could give you.
And that is really important because, while you're talking about trust, and if people are going to tell you things or allow you into their life, and you have that special opportunity to peek and be aware, and then do you sell that?
Right. Well, he never could. And that is, I think, why he did not become a real famous, great, big writer, because he wouldn't do those kind of things. And yet people trusted him. Bill Cosby was a close friend of his and actually had invited him to be his family's only photographer, the photographer. And my dad, again, that would have been a steady income, would have been a good income. He did not want to be restricted. He wanted to be able to, take pictures when he felt he needed and for what he needed. And the job called more for him being exclusively Bill Cosby's family photographer. So he didn't do that. He didn't, I don't think he ever regretted it. But that's, again, the kind of lesson that I learned from my dad is you have to follow, your path. You have to do what is important to you.
And so important to have a path that's a decent path.
Definitely.
Because unfortunately in 2004, it's almost like everything's for sale.
Right. I think that one of the things that he was not so much aware of was the illiteracy that is rampant in our country. And once he retired, he was board president of the Altadena Library District. And he wanted to help people. He started studying and researching, and for him, and even for myself, we grew up with books. We grew up with reading and loving reading and writing. And the idea that there were people, adults, who can't read or write and enjoy that freedom was just, foreign. So there were things that we needed to do about it.
It is amazing that I think that as we grow up, particularly when we're children, we just make the assumption that that's how other children live. This is how it works. And it's an absolute eye-opener when you begin to discover, and I'm sure you heard this from your parents about hungry children.
Sure.
Because you had to eat your bread crust or whatever that story was. But it's very difficult to conceptualize when you're getting 3 meals a day that there are actually some parents who cannot feed their children. By the same token, if you've got books in your house, it does not dawn on you that there are people who don't have books, and one step further, people who cannot read.
They cannot read. We had books in our home. We had all kind of books. When I was a young girl, my parents read to me, And what made me learn to read was that they would read a portion every night, you know, with a long, thick book, and they would read a chapter a night. Well, I wanted to know what the ending was. So I would get the book and go under the covers with a flashlight and read way ahead because I could not wait. You know, I could not wait. And they just instilled that love of reading, and I have it today. And I would do things to encourage people and tutor people to learn to read.
But now in Altadena, and we're not going to dwell on the library because later on we're going to have your librarian
Yes.
come and
Right.
talk
Mrs.
about the
Cora
library.
Forcell will
Right.
come and talk
But
about
there is
services.
now in Altadena the
Bob Lucas Memorial Library and Literacy Center. And the way that came about, he was president of the Altadena Library Board, and Prop 13 had closed that library site in Altadena. It's the branch. There was some money that came in that they were able to get from the state, and some monies came in, and so the board was trying to decide what to do with the money, and they actually were talking about selling the branch that's on the west side of Altadena. My dad said no. He says, the people on that side of town need the branch. They need a library. And so he had to, twist some arms.
But it opened.
But it opened, and what is so awesome to me, this happened in 1990 was when he dealt with it, 1989 and 1990. My dad passed away in 1990. He passed away on July 7th, 1990. The last board meeting in June, which was the last Monday in June, they voted to reopen the library. So he knew that he had accomplished his mission. He was in the hospital. The day that they called, actually Mr. Tima called and told me, and I went directly to the hospital and I told him, I said, Dad, I said, they're gonna reopen the library, and tears came to his eyes.
And then they named the library
And
after
then
him.
afterward, they decided in 1990 when they opened, and they did a survey in the neighborhood, and the community decided, they voted to name it the Bob Lucas Memorial Library. So,
If this isn't a lesson in principles and values, I don't know what is. We're going to go to break. I want to thank Roberta very much
Thank
for
you so
sharing the information about her father and the Bob Lucas Memorial Library and Literacy Center. And we're going to go to our Reading Everywhere right now, and then we're going to talk with Avery Clayton. Thank you.
thank you so much.
Talk about parenting with Shirley Smith. We're reading everywhere.
What is the importance? We've heard from people here their experiences in terms of being read to and in terms of reading. What is it that our children are gaining when an adult reads to them?
What I'm looking for in our situation is to really have pleasure in the reading experience. And we call that a shared reading experience. It's like, think about when you were a youngster and you crawled up on the lap of the most favorite person in your life, and they surrounded you with their love and took you to places far away by opening up a book. Okay, that's the kind of experience we want whenever you're reading aloud to children.
Hi, we're at the pharmacist and we're waiting for our prescription to be filled, and while we're waiting, we're going to read, just to show you that we can read everywhere, anywhere, and at any time. I'm Natalie, and this is Dominique. And we're going to read A Letter to Amy. And it landed, skipping across a hopscotch game. The letter blew this way and it blew that. Peter chased it this way and that, but he couldn't catch it. Do you think you could have caught it? You think so? Let's see what happens. Big drops of rain began to fall. Just then someone came, turned the corner. It was Amy. She waved to him. The letter flew right toward her. She mustn't see it, or the surprise will be spoiled. They both ran for the letter. In his great hurry, Peter bumped into Amy. He caught the letter before she could see it. She caught it before she could see it was for her, but she fell down.
Reading aloud does so many things. Reading to children does so many things for kids. It helps them to see that you value reading. You, as an adult, are taking time to sit and read. There must be something good about this reading. You're taking time from your busy schedule to read. There must be something special about reading.
Dark clouds raced across it like wild horses. He glanced up at Amy's window. She wasn't there. Only Peppy, her parrot, sat peering down. Willie, didn't I tell you to stay home? His dog came anyway, Dominique, see him? Peter thought, what will the boys say when they see a girl at my party? Suddenly there was a flash of lightning, a roar of thunder. A strong wind blew the letter out of his hand. There goes the letter. Peter chased the letter. He tried to stop it with his foot.
One of the reasons we want read alouds to happen with kids is that it encourages the development of vocabulary. You can tell those children that have been read to by the size of their vocabulary. In schools, I know as teachers we can recognize that that's happening in the home because children's vocabulary is so rich. And one of the tips I have, first off, is that you revisit books and is to entertain and amuse and provide the wonderful recreation of reading aloud to the child. So they're the most important ones. I really want to encourage you to read a book that you like because, I mean, you're picking it for them, but you're going to be doing the work, so you will have to make sure that it's something you're comfortable with and that you enjoy so that you can impart that joy of reading.
Again, we're with our discussion on children who are carrying on that which their parent has established. And our guest now is Avery Clayton, whose mom, Dr. Mamie A. Clayton, has established the Mamie Clayton Memorial Library. No, it's not a memorial library, just library.
Oh, yeah.
It's memorial?
Well, no, it's not memorial.
Yeah, right,
Because
okay.
My mom is still
She's
around,
still with us.
and she's going strong.
She's going strong. It's
Yeah.
not memorial. It's the library of a collection of, well, don't let me keep
Sure,
talking. You tell us what it is.
Well, I'm very proud of what my mother's done. Over the last 40 years, my mother has assembled the second largest collection in the world
Wow.
of rare books, documents, films, music, photographs, and memorabilia on African American culture. It's
Second in the world?
second only to
Wow.
the Schomburg Center in the New York City Public Library. There are over 20,000 books written by or about blacks that date to the very first book published in America by a black author. And that was 1773, Phillis Wheatley's poems on various subjects, religious and moral. And my mother has the only known signed copy of that
Wow.
book. So it's really an important piece of American history, Shirley. And then there's the film collection. We have the largest African American film collection in the country, and it dates back to 1903. Then there's a sheet music and record library. We have original scores by people like U.B. Blake and W.C. Handy and Fats Waller and on and on.
What got your mother started?
Well, my mother's a professional librarian, and she began her career as a librarian at Doheny Library in 1952, and in 1959 she went to UCLA's law library, where she became a law librarian. And during the turbulent 60s, she was given the charge of establishing the Afro-American Studies Center Library, which still
Okay.
exists at
Yes,
UCLA
it certainly
today.
does.
But during the course of purchasing materials for the library, she was told that she wanted to buy things that were out of print by authors like Langston Hughes and Paul Laurence Dunbar and Zora Neale Hurston, so that our history would be available to those students for research. But the administration didn't see that as a good expenditure of the budget. And it just got her to thinking, if other institutions felt this way, what's going to become of our history? And she had always collected, But Shirley, I'm telling you, she went into overdrive then. Yeah, I mean, it's like me and my brothers, Renee and Lloyd, you know, it's like, oh, here she comes, another book.
Now, was all this at your house at the given time?
It was all at the house.
Wow.
Eventually, like collections do, the collection outgrew the house, and my dad built a building in the back for her.
Okay.
And then the collection started going out there, and then about 20 years ago, it outgrew that.
It grew that.
So now, you know, we have the film, photographs, and music collections at a private archival storage facility in North Hollywood, you know, so that they don't.
And yeah, I was going to say, it becomes very important. It's not just like, you know, going to yard sales and picking up stuff. This is things you have to maintain.
Well, you know, like in the ephemera collection, for instance, you know, the ephemera collection is a documents collection, and she has like the personal letters of people like Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver. She has Josephine Baker's personal letters. She has the Marcus Garvey papers. You know, all this stuff represents our history, and it's really rich. And, you know,
now, as she began to collect, was she recognizing?
No.
Okay. So it wasn't the end result. She just was picking up things as she went.
She was doing what she felt led to do. I don't think that she ever had it in mind that she was going to have the largest collection of this kind. You know, that it was her passion. And it was instilled in her by her grandparents, by my grandparents,
right.
Her parents.
So what we're really seeing, and this being a parenting show, is the influence that the generations have.
Exactly.
And when there's something important in a family, it gets carried on. Now, were you always part of it, or did you kind of go, oh, gee,
and
then later,
into it. You know, I mean, it's really amazing how your parents get smarter as you get older.
This is true, because they're really nitwits when you're young. Oh, yeah.
But I've just really come to believe in the collection with every fiber of my being.
Wow.
It is so important, Shirley. You know, and it's the whole idea that this collection represents our culture. And it is a beautiful thing that is meant to be shared. And that's my purpose on the planet right now, is to make sure that this collection is shared in an appropriate way. You know, one of the things that really concerns me a lot is the fact that most people, according to media depictions, think that black life has to do with either slavery or the civil rights movement
or basketball
or urban life, you know, and you know, black culture is so much richer and broader than that, and this collection really is a testament, you know, to those accomplishments that our ancestors have made, and I really see sharing this collection as a way of bringing the world, you know, to this collection, so that we can have greater intercultural understanding.
And yes. Now, you're executive director.
Yes.
Do you get lots of calls for speaking, and you're going places, sharing information?
Yeah, you know, this is, offering this collection has taken on a life and an energy of its own. And as you know, I was with Pasadena School District for many years, and I decided that I had to focus on the collection.
But now I remember also, you know, my memory kind of goes, you're an artist yourself.
I'm an artist myself. I brought some of my work, and as a matter of fact, I brought some for you.
Did you?
Yes, I did, a little gift. I brought you some of my note cards.
Perfect guess, no. No, but I suddenly remembered, because you did a mural somewhere with some kids that traveled around. So not only is your mom talented, but you're on your own, without the collection, you were doing art.
Yeah. Well, that's how I've made my living most of my life, as an artist.
Well, you're an artist.
Yes,
so
I'm an
he's
artist.
not only executive director, it is Avery Clayton, the artist.
Yes, very true.
So what was the story with the mural? I'm sorry, I didn't say this would be part of the interview, but
that's okay.
I think
that's great. Well, you know, I was at Allendale, and Allendale is a school in Pasadena.
Okay.
And those were wonderful years for me. I really loved being there. During the summers, you know, we would have the summers off. Allendale didn't have summer school. And during the summers, the PTA paid me to paint the mural there.
I see.
And it was a great project. And so Allendale was one of those schools that had a lot of children from all over the world. We had children from Czechoslovakia. And
you're talking about the mural that was in the kind of outside hallway.
Yes.
No, I never knew you had done that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
No, does it have your little name in the corner?
my little name
I'm
in the
sorry, I
corner.
do this on interviews. You know, I go trailing off for other very important things. But, you know, while we're talking about the Black collection that his mother has and that he's very proud of and he's following in that footstep, that does not mean that our offspring, who are just absolutely supportive of what we do,
Oh, yeah.
don't have some interests that they were pursuing of their own. So I'm sorry.
Well, thank you.
Went off in that direction.
I enjoyed the little diversion.
Okay, cool. But I do want to say that I'm not able to say, you know, we don't give your particulars, like where you can call him. But at the end of the show, we say where you can talk about parenting, and we promptly put you in touch with the Mamie A. Clayton Library. Did I say it correctly?
Absolutely, you
Okay.
certainly did. You know, and I just want to say that, you know, the reason I left the district was because I want to make sure that the collection is protected. But our goal with the collection is to create a world-class center, the Mamie A. Clayton Library and Cultural Center in Los Angeles, as a library-based cultural institution dedicated to Black intelligence and creativity, but for the world.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You know, a lot of times people get very hung up. Oh, it's a Black thing. No, it's not a Black
This
thing.
is not a
It is
Black
for
thing.
everybody.
This is-
You know,
yes.
it's focusing on Blacks, but everybody
Yes.
needs to know this.
Yes.
And we do have a rendering here of the future home of the Mamie A. Clayton. I have to rehearse these
Yes.
things. The Mamie A. Clayton Library. So we'll put that up on camera, and that's that's what they're looking for. What is it? Next
Well,
month? No. I'm
No,
being
actually,
silly.
we're talking 5 years down the road, but we're talking about a world-class facility. We're talking about a 175,000 square foot facility that has all the amenities that world-class facilities have. Restaurants and gift shops and a theater and coffee shops and classrooms and meeting spaces and just a place where people can go to enjoy an afternoon.
Good. It won't be in Beverly Hills now, will it?
No, it won't be in
Thank
Beverly
you.
Hills. Actually, we're going to keep it in Los Angeles
Oh.
proper.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
In the
yeah.
hood?
In Los Angeles proper.
Oh, he doesn't want to call it the hood. Okay, okay. But accessible to those that it's depicting.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
We don't want to have to go across town to the strange land
No,
and
no.
go, well, here we are.
Well, you know, we've had offers from several universities that want to bring the collection there. And, you know, I feel very strongly, Shirley, my mother collected this collection here.
Good.
The collection was born in Los Angeles, and it will remain in Los
Yay,
Angeles.
good for you.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I want to thank you so much for bringing this information forward.
It's my pleasure.
It is always exciting to have, you know, we talk about
This is
parenting,
the-
but it's really important to recognize that parenting, you know, we're not just talking about infants, it
Yes.
goes on. And so what we found in both the guests for today is their support, their interest, their belief in what it is that their parents have done, how it's influenced their life, and how they're carrying on the tradition. Has parenting changed? I asked that question at the beginning of this classic. So was the topic and the information still helpful? You tell me.